This is the Conrad Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Guess it would help if I got rid of the logo there, guys. How are you? Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is May 11th, 2023, and this is episode 305 of Workshop Radio. How the hell is everybody? Still taking a little getting used to calling it Workshop Radio instead of the old Workshop podcast. Kind of excited about it. Like the new little branding, looks a little shinier, all of that jazz. We got 4 people hanging around in the background to get on here to talk about our book this evening. Real quick, we'll get the announcements out of the way and then we'll jump in as always. First off, there's still tickets available to the Thrivalist Fair. I'm going to be speaking at that in Addy, Washington, May 28th, 29th. I believe it's $50 for the whole weekend for an entire family. Going to be some great speakers there. Paul Wheaton even is going to be on the schedule to speak. So it's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. So if you're in or around that area, you want to get together on the 28th, we're going to have a sit around the fire, have a workshop get together. Should be quite a bit of fun. I got a top secret piece of swag just for people who meet up in the work or have a workshop meetup in person this year. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Number 2, first off, if you go to toolmantim.co, the sign up for the workshop is now live. I accidentally had it on the Patch of the Month site, not toolmantim.co. So if you go there, you can sign up to put your deposit down to hold your spot. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have an event here in Canada. We're limiting it to 30 people. Going to be a great time. I cannot wait. All right. From there, guys, we got to remember our sponsor this evening. Thursdays is always Fortress K9, my brother Joel Riles. I just got to see him in person in, outside of Gordonsville anyway, at Nicole's place, LFTM, the Holler. We had a blast of a time there. Get to sit around, smoke a couple cigars, drink a little bit of bourbon. All around great time. We had a good time. So anyway, if you're looking to get a metaphorical kick to the butt, if you need to get motivated, if you need to build something great in your life, go by, give Joel some support, and follow him, fortressk9.com. And finally, guys, for tonight, today's tool is the BATTARIX battery card. This thing is pretty cool. Anyway, for what it's worth, I picked these up with my own money before I got started into this at all. And the video went absolutely insane on TikTok. The company reached out to me. They're like, hey, we'd love to give you a discount code. So anybody in the workshop that is looking at picking these up, they're like $18. It's the size of 4 credit cards, and it'll give you 3 hours of talk time on your phone. Check the link below. With that, guys, let's slide on in. Let's see who all we have live here with us now. I see. Hang on. Let's add. Hey, Byron. How are you, brother?
Good. How you doing, sir?
Not too bad at all. We had Rachel. We had Nate. Rachel, you still there? Not yet. She'll be back. Don't worry. So, how you been, Byron?
Pretty good. You?
Not too bad. Was this your? How many times have you read 1 Second After now?
About the 4th time.
Okay, not bad. And when we get Rachel on here, we'll find out. This has been. What's that?
It's like my fallback post-apocalyptic book to read. Just the easy go. I mean, it's got a lot of hard stuff in it, but it's easy to read. And
oh yeah, I love it. It was my first as well. Your mic. Let me see if I can turn you up a little, Byron. You're a little bit quiet. Let me see if I can. Let's bring you up there. Try that now, Byron.
Does this seem better?
Yeah, a little better there. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. So this, for those out there, 1 second out. Hey, Nate, the bearded wonder does appear. How are you, brother?
Yep. How's it going?
Not bad at all. For a few minutes just before we started, I thought I was going to be the only guy in here, or the only person in general, but now we got 4 of us. We look like the Brady Bunch again. So.
There you go.
And I shall be there momentarily. I'm actually pouring myself a drink.
That's okay.
What are you drinking, Tim?
This evening, yes, we might as well play that. I always love this game. I picked this up in Cookville. This is, let me see, turn my light off on my camera for a minute. Henry McKenna, aged 10-year bottled and bond. And it is a smooth bourbon. Has kind of a caramel finish to it. It's just on ice tonight.
Nice.
Anyone else drinking anything?
A little Irish coffee, a little Jameson in my coffee.
What do you got, Nate?
Rabbit Hole, the 4 grain.
Nice. And Rachel, what are you drinking?
I'm trying to show it. It's Jim Beam Black Extra Aged Bourbon.
I haven't tried the black one yet. I heard it's good though. Hey, we got.
It's not my favorite of the Jim Beams, but it's good.
I don't know if I've ever tried a Jim Beam. Maybe I'll need to one of these times. But we got Martinson family in the audience. We got Dog Creek Farm said that this was one of their first ones. Very easy read. Now I'm 20 or so into books. It happens. It's an easy book to lose yourself in, but at times it can be a really hard one to read too, eh?
Especially if you got kids.
Oh yeah. My goodness, yes. Unreal.
Or dogs.
Yeah, that's true too. Just do a sound check with everybody. Anybody in the audience, if you're listening, everybody sounding okay? I was having some issues on my end tonight. Who knows what's going on? But you guys all sound good to me now. So,
hang on, I got to grab a plug. I just realized I'm on like 8%.
Yeah, you're good. Sound like my kids. So, Nate, how many times have you read 1 Second After now?
Twice,
right on. And Byron, you said this is about 4 for you?
Yeah, about 4 times all the way through.
I think me too. I read it once. The next thing I was going to ask is, when was the first time you guys read this? You remember, Byron?
Probably 2014, maybe. I don't know what year it came out, but it was one of my first reads, really.
I think 2009 was the release date, and I don't know beyond that, but
yeah, it might have been actually about 12, because we actually had a prepping Kentucky prepping group here.
Okay.
Disbanded, or just kind of everybody just kind of life took over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And adulting, and we had a book share, whether it was paperback or or virtual or PDFs, and that was one of the PDFs that they sent everybody. So,
okay. How about you, Nate? Do you remember when or where you read it the first time?
It's been within the past 2 years, I would say, maybe 3. I got out of the listening to the radio and went to audiobooks and podcasts. I mean, it was probably 2021.
Okay.
Because I did a year of podcasts.
Yep.
And then went to audiobooks.
That seems to be the way, doesn't it?
Yep.
And
I listened to the entire thing yesterday.
Nice.
Wow.
Well, that's for me, it would have been about the same time as you, Byron, somewhere in the early 20-teens, maybe 11, 12. I know it was before I moved to Alberta, because I remember waiting at Outpatients for Becky one time, reading it's one of the last books I read, like in a hard form, and everything's been audio for the last decade or so. And so was there one scene, what scene stuck with each of you? Let's start with that. Now, before we go any further, spoiler alerts from here on out. So if you haven't read this book, turn this off. Go read the book. We'll be waiting for you when we come back. It'll be recorded, but it'll be there for you, because I don't want to spoil this. To me, this is, I'm going to say it, I think it's the best modern prepper book out there. Now, somebody can maybe fight with me on it, but I'm open to disagreement, but that's where I land on it. So, Nate, what was the scene that stuck with you, without going too much detail yet?
The Walgreens and the liquor bottle.
Yes, right on. I picked up a bunch on that this time that I've missed the first 3 times. Don't ask me why, but Rach, how about you? I'd love to hear, what was the one that kind of stabbed you in the side or jumped you or something?
When they buried the grandfather.
Okay.
And the little girl went on to the swing set.
Yeah. Oh.
And basically had her.
Yep.
Her touch with mortality.
How about you, Byron?
The nursing home. I guess right after when he gets his hand infected. You know, all the stuff in the nursing home, then that just kind of was like the icing on the cake.
So like I said, I read that book for the first time probably like 2011, 2012, and then never read it again for almost a decade, maybe 8-9 years. And the scene that always stuck with me was the retirement home scene, the old folks home. Just the absolute, because this was the first book I ever read about collapse. It was the first book I ever read about EMPs. And it's one of them that just, you don't think about how bad shit could get. I remember even talking to Becky about it. And, but, you know, the insulin thing was something, but the oxygen, they had no power for what do they call them? Food pumps or stuff?
Yeah, food pump stuff.
Yeah. Stomach.
Yeah. The oxygen, the food, the everything.
Oh, yeah.
Water.
And then you had the Alzheimer's patients running off in the fields. You had people dying, laying there on gurneys. It felt like, well, anyway, you could see how that could have been turned into a TV show or a movie pretty easy because it's dark stuff.
Yeah.
And we got gunfighter concealment and a rapier, I believe, right? I think I got it right this time. He said the book that started it all. And I think for modern, I don't know, anyway, like you look back on some of the classic, it wouldn't even be called prepper books, but, you know, like On the Beach or, oh, shoot, what are the other ones? Oh, boy, I'm going to lose. Anyway, a lot of the ones from the 60s and going forward. Yeah, though. Go ahead.
I'll just draw a total.
I know, I lost it too. The one where the guy accidentally sets the missile off and shoots the train, and it's the one that Angry American says influenced all his books.
Yeah.
Anyway, it'll come to me once the show's halfway over.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
We're all in the same boat. Somebody in the comments will tell us.
Somebody will yell it out, or we'll put it in the Telegram like in the middle of the night. Somebody will wake up and post it in there.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is that the Patriots one that everybody's always bitching about?
No. So, okay. I came to a realization the other day. I'm going to give Patriots another go. I think I need to, because I think I really want to have him on the show. I think I'd really like to.
Yeah, he'd be a good guest.
He would be an awesome guest. He has been involved in prepping for decades, and despite the fact that I didn't love his book the first time around, I'm going to give it another shot. I think it deserves it. Oh,
I've read it twice.
Have you? It reads. Yeah, go ahead.
It was better the second time.
Okay.
Because I get acclimated to all the brand naming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was I was already expecting it, so it wasn't like well, my gosh, he's just he's just a shield for every company out there. I mean,
And I don't. It's funny because when I first listened, it's funny we're going on this tangent, but it's true. I've kind of shit on Patriots a few times, and maybe I shouldn't, but I mean, he has his place in prepper porn. He's probably one of the first ones as well, but it read like an Amazon shopping list at first. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to read it again because the opening kind of financial collapse stuff was really good. And Dog Creek Farm said, I'm not sure he or she, but they struggled with it as well. And Rapier says, what's that?
That about sums it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Patriots Works is a good bookend to collect dust for other books. Oh. And, Rapier said, I couldn't get past chapter 4 of Patriots. That's about as far as I got to. Well, I'm going to try again. I really would love... I almost feel bad wanting to get him on the show because I don't want him to think I don't like the dude. It's just that book was a struggle. So.
I think he had good intentions. It was a good book, but if you didn't have all the name branding and it was just, now you would think there'd be an Amazon wish list at the end of it.
Exactly.
Or Amazon store to click on everything. I mean,
I almost think I would have done it with the list at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's all the affiliate links?
Right.
What are you doing?
If it were
Bruno, would you
an
go lay
ebook
down?
today, it would have all of those.
Would
You know
you
what I
go lay
mean? It would
down?
have all of them together with it, like it would for sure.
Oh yeah.
And Rapier says 299 days was tough to get into, but it got better.
Dog, would you lay down?
I enjoy it, but it's a third. You know, it's behind the 1 second after books. It's behind Going Home.
Yeah, I read all of them, and it's just.
Booby, would you lay down?
It's not
Please,
horrible.
Lay down.
It's
No, it was good.
Yeah, it was just one of those. Let's see.
Yeah, I've read all. I wish now those I would have went on, but that was before the big audio book took off. So.
Oh yeah.
So.
And Dog Creek says they have 299 days as well. Have to give it another try. I enjoyed it. I've read it all the way through once. I wasn't able to get through it a second time, but
would you lay down?
The 11th book is not. It's called like 12 Generals or something like that, and it's really hard to. Yeah, that one's not worth reading. But all right, so where do we start? Oh, John Palmer, how many times have you read it?
How many times have I read what?
1 second after.
Twice. The second time I finished up today.
So I shouldn't say subjected, but Becky actually enjoyed it. She'd say she liked it, which for her is a huge step in the right direction for anything like that. But we listened to the whole thing on our trip to Tennessee and back. And I even got her to listen to 10 or 12 hours of Atlas Shrugged, which
you guys had enough room to finish Atlas Shrugged on the ride.
I know. I just couldn't get her. I felt bad. I would only listen to it I shouldn't say only when she slept, but it's a throw somebody in the middle of.
I really got to question her taste. She did marry you after all.
That's true. Rapier says 3 times. They're a nerd, so no, nothing wrong with that. All right, so let's go around the horn. We'll start with John. Oh, we never asked John. What was the scene, John, that jumped out and grabbed you the most out of this book?
Man, that I don't know that there's I had a really hard time trying to remember when this book was written compared to now, because if it happened in today's atmosphere, I think it would go a lot differently. It just, I think, I don't know, or if it would have happened like in earlier years, it would have went a lot differently, because naturally people were so much, without trying to be, they were more prepared just for life. And there's been such an uptick in popularity on being prepared. I really think things would go different nowadays than they would when this book was written. He was probably right on with how bad it was, how quick it was, so bad for the time frame that it was written. But I for some reason, I was having a hard time forcing my brain into that shoe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But
let me throw this at you then, because this was Becky's biggest complaint from the book, was she felt that she didn't think it would collapse as fast as it did. Now, I vehemently opposed her opinion. I thought that it probably would. But let's start with Rachel and we'll work our way around the horn. What do you think, Rachel? Did it seem about on, or did it seem fast or slow, or what?
Considering it just went from the Survivalist series, as it's called,
right,
to this one, we're taking the comparison from, we've just been reading a series about somebody who was actually kind of a prepper in the first place,
right,
to moving to somebody who is former military and never thought about the future, even though he knew what was possible and probable.
Right.
And never had extra food, never had extra anything growing on the property, never did any of the basic things.
That's a good point.
That a well-educated man who has studied these things should actually look into.
Right.
And that actually
Now,
bothered me from the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will hedge my earlier statement by the fact that it did mention in there that people in my part of the country survived it a lot better than the people on that side of the country.
Yep.
Because of all the food and the way we live and everything. So maybe it's because I've grown up here and just been surrounded my whole life. It's just like, I don't see it being that bad, at least not in my area.
And that's a good point. And because here's something with these books, we all come at them from our own lens of where we've grown up and where we live. And again, Becky and I guess talked about that. Other than the extreme cold up here, there's lots of good area to grow. There's lots of hunting up here now, and you don't have these huge, I mean, I guess if you move toward Edmonton or Calgary, you would, but you don't have these huge condensed population points, which would, like they said, like Florida was, right? Florida was absolutely decimated. New York City would be, I mean, that'd be some of the worst places, I think, on the planet to try to survive something like that.
Right.
Well, the population of Oklahoma, I don't even think is equal to the population of New York City. So,
I'm sure you're right.
Like 8 million or something.
In Illinois, we have 11 million total in Illinois.
Right.
And how many's in Chicago?
3.
Really? I thought Chicago was bigger than that.
Jax, really?
No, they say like the collar counties is around 9.
Dude.
Okay.
Sorry.
But I mean, it is what it is.
Chris Dixon said, "You can have all the land you want, but if you have no seed saved, good luck." Right?
Yep.
Okay, lay down.
But yeah, so what do you think, Nate? Do you think it would have went faster or slower?
Jaxie,
do you
lay
think
down.
It was pretty
Lay down. Come on, lay down.
On the nose.
Lay down.
I would say, honestly, I would think it would probably be about a week.
Okay.
You got no power. Nobody's got food stocked up.
Nope.
Grocery stores have been looted out.
Right.
Where are you getting food from?
Well, because there's a line in the book that says a lot of people think that meat just grows in those pink styrofoam packages, right? I was like, there's a lot of good lines in this book.
Wow,
where do we go? Okay. Oh, Byron, what about you? What did you think on did it seem realistic? Now, I know we're all kind of preaching to the choir here because we're all preppers of some ilk or another, but what do you think as far as...
it went probably faster than what it would. Because even, just around here in Central Kentucky, during the COVID shortage and stuff, I mean, they weren't ready to riot just yet. But, I would think even like Louisville area, some areas might be a little closer, to the thing. I think when he wrote it, at that time, it would have taken a lot longer, in 2009 when he wrote it compared to now. So
15 years. Crazy how much, and where are we going to be in 15 years from now, right?
Yeah.
That's
the thing, like talking about COVID shortages, even in my area, like, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but like there were some times when I was ordering stuff from the store or whatever that, I couldn't get maybe all the things I wanted, but I was never out of all the things that I needed. And I mean, I barely, of course, I through that whole thing, I never set foot in a store for like 2 or 3 years, like in a grocery store or whatever. So I never really saw any bare shelves or anything, but I wasn't in the store to see that stuff. But I mean, I'm still ordering stuff from the store every week and picking it up or whatever. And I'm still getting like probably 90 to 95% of everything I'm ordering. So the shelves couldn't have been too bare unless it's just mostly things that I don't buy.
Well, go ahead.
In all fairness, I live in Mennonite and Amish country. I was never without anything.
There you go. See, that's perfect. You don't have to prepare. You just move in with your neighbors when times get tough.
What about the grocery stores, Nate? Because I mean, it was 24 hours in the book.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah, we ran into some problems here at the beginning. It was really the cheaper stuff went first,
okay.
and then the more expensive stuff kind of stayed around for a little bit. But yeah, I could see 1 to 3 days probably.
Because what did they? I think the average is about 3 days. People have, the average person has about 3 days worth of food that they could, eat if they needed to.
Mhm.
I can't imagine that. I probably got enough food on hand to eat for a year without going to the grocery store. Now, we might not like what we're eating every day, but we're not going to friggin' starve,
No, I get it, and I mean I know it's kind of fun to play these games because we're like I said, we're hopefully all of us are a little more prepared than the average individual. If we're not, well, maybe we need to work on that. But
Maybe we need to listen to the stuff we're watching more.
right, but when you have probably 90% of the people have 3 days worth of food or less on hand, I know what I would do. I know that if I knew I had 3 days worth of food, that first hour I'd be at the grocery store buying or procuring anything and everything I could.
Mhm.
And I know I'm not the only one who would be thinking that way. I'm sure there'd be lots of
Right.
other people.
And that only depends on if you got cash on you.
Right. Well, there's the other thing, because like we've dealt with on 3 occasions here now, we've had one really serious outage and then 2 kind of halfway outages. And all the debit machines, all the bank machines, credit card, they were all down. And you had to have cash. And it doesn't take very long for people to run out of what little bit of cash they may or may not have on hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only that, so like in this part of the country too, like cattle and pigs outnumber people.
It sells too.
It sure does, Nate. I like that silver there, Nate. That looks good.
I know. I may have a couple of them laying around.
Shameless plug, but we got some more workshop silver coming up soon. So, Arapier says, my wife works at a grocery store. They get a delivery truck every day of inventory. Grocery stores hold an average of 3 days worth of food on hand for a third of the population it serves.
Yep.
So if you figure that in, that is 1 day's worth of food for the entire population. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's like banks not carrying cash anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy because I basically grew up in grocery stores because my dad worked at the Kroger for 47 years. So, I mean, I've seen him go from, he worked, you always be in the back room. You see a lot of overstock.
Yeah.
You walk in there, just a few carts, and they don't even want that in there. They want everything out on the shelf. And
I was just going to say that, Byron. I grew up with a dad who was a meat cutter for like 5 different Oh, that's a nice one. I like that, Nate. A grocery store. Same thing. So he moved from an IGA to a Foodland to a Sobeys, which were kind of from small, medium, and then a big, large one. Every time they built a bigger store, the floor got bigger and the storage out back got smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, my best friend there, Danny, he's a grocery manager, and he always laughs. He's like, yep, everybody wants us to get something out of the magical land that's called Outback. And he said that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Yep. I mean, I remember when I used to work in a grocery store, and it was a little tiny mom and pop place, and they probably had their back storage room was enough to get probably 4 pallets wide in it.
Okay.
And probably about 10 pallets deep.
So 40 or single
40
stack?
pallets.
Or double? Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's floor to ceiling. They got pallet racks in there.
Right.
But it's not much room.
No.
You're talking a semi-load?
Mm-hmm.
And
basically, yeah.
Like the store that Dad just retired from would be well over 100,000 square feet. And I don't think there'd be enough room out back to even hold what you just said, Nate. That's crazy. Like everything goes right to the floor. What you see is what you get, and it's gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I remember I worked at Winn-Dixie for a couple of years, and we'd get I was in the dairy frozen food. We'd get a half a truckload of dairy. I mean, he would put part of it out, and the rest of it would sit in the back for for all week.
Yeah.
When
I was a kid, it was that way always.
Yeah, we got dairy truck one day, and then frozen food next in the grocery truck, and that was it. You got 3 trucks a week. There wasn't this every day, and
so the writing I think is a notch above going home. Would most people agree with me on that?
I would agree.
A lot less repetition. You can tell that at least it was written. Now, the funny thing is, you guys know I like to go on Goodreads and I pull up the negative reviews, so we'll get to them afterwards. But some of people's complaints were still the writing in it. And did anybody pick up on anything that you thought was shitty writing or?
Nope.
I didn't either. I love Chris and Angry American, his stuff, but there's times he would reuse the same phrase over and over and over again. Even Ayn Rand, trying to think of which one it was that she reused a ton, but there was 3 or 4 sayings I noticed in her book that just kept self-immolation, burning yourself to death.
Yeah.
She used that term, I bet you 40 times in the book, but in a 60-hour book, I guess you're good to do that, right?
Pretty much.
So one thing I noticed, I thought one of the cool little literary tricks that he used in this was the cigarettes. So
yeah,
he bought the cigarettes, and those cigarettes were a literal clock. You know what I mean? That were ticking as the end of the story was coming along. So each time he'd smoke one, it was a visual representation of his time running out. And
yep.
I never picked up on that until this 4th reading. I was like, I really like that.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
What about the Hamid? What do you guys think of Hamid, the grocery store guy? His backstory?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was good.
Go ahead, Byron. I'll get you first.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good little plug, just kind of, what our world had actually seen. What he probably seen firsthand somewhere, with the post 9/11.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah, it was a nice kind of, here's a history of our little town. This guy came in, pre 9/11, the post 9/11, he had issues, but he's still an American.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
I'm actually quite surprised that he wasn't utilized as a source for knowledge, on how to do stuff when you don't have normal means that you're used to. Talking about he come from a place where he the power going out is like, okay, this is Tuesday.
Yeah,
we don't have any power. I mean, I would have thought somebody like that would have been a knowledge base on how to live with not having the stuff you're used to. But
he was a pretty ingenious dude. I loved he's the type of guy that would thrive in the apocalypse. He has that kind of country store that's already built. People already have, people know to come there. And it was kind of cool how the John there, the main character, was like, you better hold on to these cigarettes, because if you sell them all, you're going to regret it pretty quick. And then he just kept trading them off. He got himself a generator. And what do you guys think would be Bonnie Blue, you're right. That was the other one I wrote down. His daughter's insulin clock was literally insulin supply was literally a ticking clock as well. Hey.
Yep.
Anybody know anybody in their family that's requires insulin at all?
My wife, but she's type 2, and I could manage hers with diet, and she's not very sensitive. So some people, they can crash and go into a coma or have really bad effects from having really high blood sugar. But just the other day, hers was 470 something, and she's just feels normal, So and some people would be in a coma if their sugar was almost 500, but I've seen hers over 6, and she's still acting normal. So, but I could absolutely manage hers through diet and what have you. My brother I had an older brother that was 11 years older than me. He died when I was 7 years old, because as soon as he turned 18, he just decided to start eating whatever he wanted and not really measuring his insulin or checking his blood sugar. And he would just give himself how much ever insulin he thought he needed from what he ate. And yeah, he ended up getting sick. Mom thought he had the flu because she didn't know or didn't realize, how bad he was doing, I guess. And so, like, after he laid on the couch sick for a few days, she ended up taking him to the hospital. And by the time she took him to the hospital, he was so far gone that the doctor's like, if you'd have brought him in yesterday, we still wouldn't have been able to save him. He was, he just absolutely just didn't do what he needed to do, and he killed himself. So, but he was type 1, like the little girl in this story. And there's a huge difference between the two.
So I had to do some digging because I didn't know I knew what I always knew juvenile diabetes was type 1 and type 2 was, what do they call it? Adult or, basically self-induced diabetes or whatever. And so I wondered what happened to people who had diabetes before, insulin was out there. And because I assumed they just died at birth, but now you guys may have known this already, but it doesn't, with kids, it doesn't, the symptoms don't tend to show up until somewhere between, I can't remember if it was 4 and 14 or 7 and 14. A lot of times the kids will, there's Chuck right there. It sounded like they would live fairly normal until all of a sudden their pancreas would stop working and then they would just die. How crazy is that? That's awful. Yep. And I wanted to go back here. Rapier said, my parents, they're on numerous other prescriptions as well. Said, as Ken Berry would say, their life is fragile without meds. That is
one thing I worry about with my wife, because she literally takes like 12 different prescriptions a day. Some of them in the morning, some of them in the evening, some of them twice a day, and it's high blood pressure, high blood sugar, or the diabetes, and cholesterol and thyroid, and goodness, I can't even sit here and right off the top of my head remember everything she takes medication for. I know I have trouble keeping track of all of them. There's so many.
Because they talked about it, the doctor and different things. There was, people on anti-rejection meds for transplant, or they would have been gone quick. The people with cancer who, they said, what did he say? That cancer used to be a really ugly death before they had, basically painkillers that would put you in a coma, in other words, right? And diabetes was another one. Do you remember any of the other ones they'd mentioned? There was 3 or 4 others they talked about that without your meds, you
Alzheimer's. Then you have the pill addict at Walgreens.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's talk about that scene, Nate, since you brought it up. What do you think of that scene? I love that scene. That scene grows on me every time I read it. So go ahead, you explain it. Yeah.
That was the start of it falling apart, I think.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point. Very good.
And so everybody who is in chronic pain and is prescribed painkillers, even if they don't realize it, they are an addict. So, like, to try to go off of that just cold turkey, they would be the same way as any addict.
Yeah.
So, what'd you think, Nate, of how it played out? I like that.
I think it was smartly done. It didn't necessarily need a gun pulled.
Sure.
But, he knocked him out, and you deal with it. So,
okay, it's fun when you read books multiple times, because the thing I didn't catch the first 3 times was that he looked around looking for a weapon first. I don't know why I missed that.
I caught that.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I'm so good at glossing over things. I just kind of grab the high points, And what did he look? Was it newspapers or something?
Yeah, first? There was a light was rack.
What was it, Brian?
A newspaper rack or a magazine rack. There was a lightweight, whatever it was.
It was. Yeah, I was thinking that because I love the internal dialogue in this, or at least the whole when he takes a little time to describe what he looks around. But so then he grabs, what was it? Was it a quart beer bottle, Nate? Was that what it was?
That was a 1 liter whiskey bottle.
Ah, yeah, and he did say 1 liter, didn't he?
I thought so.
Yeah, so there you go. You gotta He should have had that in freedom units, but anyway, we're good. So, so how hard would you have to hit somebody with a bottle like this to break it? It would have to be pretty hard, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the movies, you just tap them on the head, it'll break.
Well, that is true, but that's like
yeah. The thing about that is, though, Tim, is a lot of the liquids, even in this country. I mean, you got 2 liter soda bottles, and 1 liter soda bottles. I don't know if they still have those or not. I haven't drank soda in like a dozen years. So.
Chuck said hypertension and people on dialysis.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I never even thought about dialysis, but
he mentions dialysis actually.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, this whole book is just a textbook on suffering, but I can only imagine what somebody who needs dialysis and can't get it, what they would go through. That could not be very, very good at all. And
it's just kidney failure symptoms or renal failure systems is. And that's a problem that plagues diabetics too, is kidney problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I showed out here right quick because I mentioned last week my brother-in-law Barrett, his father was looking to probably get his foot amputated. They took him into the hospital and they ended up only needing to take a couple of toes off, which was it still sucks, but it's a lot better than it could have been. So we're all real happy for him anyway. So. Rachel says
he'll have to relearn how to walk because most people don't realize how much your toes do to balance you and stabilize you.
Imagine. Like I said, at least he's got a foot. He'll be able to drive because that was the thing that he was worried about, but yeah. Hunter says, with my luck, it would have been a plastic pop bottle. So there was a neat little interaction there with him and Michaela as well, because he goes over and he picks up the beer bottle and she looks at him like, are you serious right now? Because I think she thought he was like going to loot or steal,
Yeah.
And okay, so now let's slide back to Michaela. This is one of the questions I had in my notes tonight. Let's take a straw poll from everybody. Did he do the right thing, or would you have saved Michaela on the side of the road?
I got enough problems. It's not my place.
Yeah, I've got my mother-in-law or even kids, whatever, I'm getting them out of the way first.
Yep.
If I buy myself, it might be a different story.
Oh, sure. Yes. What do you think, John? Oh, no, he's
no.
Okay.
So that's a little difficult for me to say because it's hard if you're not in the situation and like the placement of everybody. So I carry multiple tools. I have a gun with me all the time. I have OC spray with me all the time. That is you start dousing people with hot sauce, and man, to quote a guy that I listen to a lot, it takes the starch out of their jammies real quick. So,
okay, I will say I was somewhere in between, because the first time I listened to it, I was he was 100% in the right. And I think I still would have done the same thing, because my kids, my mother-in-law, I get it. But at the same time, when he was as observant as he says he was, and he looked around and saw that there was a truck driver there with the gun, who was obviously, he's like, hey, buddy, take a look, he just kind of casually brandishes a little bit. I think anyway, I'm not going to judge the guy for making a decision in favor of his family in a split second, because the entire time the protagonist is doing everything he can for his family. So I totally get it, but yeah, that's a tough one. Hey, I would too. If it was, Becky and the kids in the car, I think I probably would skip it, but I'd have a hell of a time leaving a single lady on the side of the road with a bunch of men like that. Let's just put it that way. I don't think I would. Go ahead, Nate. You got a thought?
If I was alone, it would be different.
Sure.
People in the car, sorry, you're on your own.
I know, and I get it, and when it comes down to it, I'm sure I would do the same thing, but God damn, didn't my hackles get up a little bit on that this last time for some reason. So another touch that I noticed, and this is kind of I like to talk about the post-apocalyptic tropes, the things that you see in a few different books or stories. So the fact that the event happened on, was it Jennifer's birthday? Is that right? Or is it the other girl? What are the two girls' names?
It's Jennifer Leanne. No, not Leanne.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
It was Jennifer's birthday, but Elizabeth was the older sister.
Right.
Okay.
So couple of things. Number one, it's her birthday. The event happens on her birthday, and the story ends 365 days later when the military shows up, which was a year from the day of the event, which was also a year to the day of her birthday. It's just one of those things that they do in stories sometimes. The Last of Us, same thing. Joel, the main male character in that book, the event happened on his birthday. I was trying to think of any other examples. I don't know if anybody else can help me out, but those are the two I know of anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see. Chuck says big toe aids a lot in your balance and walking. I asked him if it was your big toe or your little toe was worse to lose. So I was like, all right, that's good to know. So he mentioned there's a couple of events a couple of different things. I like how he tied in. There's so much to cover in this book. We might have to do a second episode. Who knows? Anyway, pop culture. There was a few different things. He was talking about how he used to love to listen to the radio late at night, and the show was Gene Shepherd. So I looked him up. Does anybody know Gene Shepherd in the radio show? No, I didn't. I didn't either. So he had the overnight slot in New York City from the mid 50s to the mid 70s, and he would do a 2 or 3 hour monologue, basically, where he would sit down and talk to himself, just telling the randomest stories. I listened to a half hour of him today, and it was him telling a story about trying to clean out his dad's carburetor in his car. And it's the stupidest story, but the dude was a storyteller. Kind of reminded me a bit of the Art Bell thing, except without the crazy people involved too, right? Let's see. Rapier said, I don't think I've read 1 year after, the sequel to 1 second after. Anybody read that?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
I read it. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
I stopped with 1 second after because it was a little too dark for me.
So the next two books,
I've read all three of them.
What do you think, John?
I agree. The next two aren't as dark, but
not as good either, right? Yeah, so I'm going to go with it. So the first book is a classic. Oh, I think John's got some staticky issues there. So the first book it's a perfect book. The second two are sequels that were written probably because the first book was so successful. And they're not bad books. The third book is a masterclass in Civil War history, but I appreciate the way that he loves history. It's just a different way of doing it. I'm looking forward to seeing what's this one, 5 years later? Is that what this one's called, or 5 years after?
5 years after.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Yeah,
because it's August. I don't remember. I think it's 5 years after.
Yeah. So he also mentions a solar event that happened in Canada a few years ago. Did anybody catch that throwaway line? Yeah. So, of course, Canada, solar event. I had to look it up. And so it was the evening of March 12th. It was 1980. Shit, I don't have the year here. 1989, I believe it was. And let's see. Vast cloud of solar plasma. The magnetic disturbance was incredibly intense. It created electrical currents in the ground under North America. And at 2:45 a.m., the currents found a weakness in the electrical power grid in Quebec. In less than 2 minutes, the entire Quebec power grid lost power for 12 hours. Millions of people found themselves stuck in office buildings, tunnels, and stalled elevators. So that was like a mini CME that they ended up having to deal with. Go ahead, Nate.
Why is it only one city?
I don't know. That's what I was wondering. What do you think? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I'm going to go a little bit of bullshit.
Okay.
It wasn't the CME. I think it very well could be the cover.
Okay.
I mean, I'm one of those. I think the Carrington event was utter bullshit.
Okay.
And I think the fact that that's about when the Carrington event started coming into the news was when this thing in Quebec happened.
Oh, really?
So I think it might have something to do with that.
So do you? Okay, let's go down that rabbit hole then. So, have you read something on the Quebec event that would make you think it was a cover up for something else?
No, but the fact that it was a CME and it was only one city.
Sure. Why wouldn't it affect? Yeah.
Because you'd have the whole eastern seaboard.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Or you'd have 5 counties.
Right.
Not just one large city.
So do we think maybe it was a nuclear test or something like that? Or what do you think? You don't know.
I don't think so. Because it'd have to be pretty low to the ground to do that.
Right.
So when the EMPs, those things got to be 250 miles up to cover a third of the country.
Right.
And you would see something like that at 2 o'clock in the morning. You'd see something up if somebody was actually awake. I think it might have been maybe they knew it was coming and they made a mistake and they shut something down they shouldn't have.
Okay.
So, or somebody tripped a breaker somewhere and it just right place, right time.
And they're like, hey, there's this solar flare right now. Let's blame it on that.
Right. I don't think
That's okay.
The solar flare is going to do more damage than just one city.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Crazy conspiracy theorist.
So here's the fun thing about it. I got, me and my, I've been doing the disaster series where I go back and look at one natural disaster and talk about it or whatever. So I think I'm going to research this Quebec issue and see if there's enough to salvage there that I could turn it into an episode, because I'm pretty interested in it myself.
Yeah, because I went down the rabbit hole on the Carrington event.
Yes, you sent it to me. I watched some and then I kind of got bored with it, never finished. But yeah,
he's got a lot of good stuff in there, and he makes very good points. Where it's like it's not in any of the media of the day,
right?
And it was only brought forth mid 2000s is when it really, really, really started getting talked about.
I'm looking up. Yeah. So, where is it in the comments? I just saw, Rapier says A Day of Wrath is much darker than 1 Second After. Have you read Day of Wrath, Nate?
No, I have
anybody?
Not.
Okay. So, did somebody say they had?
No, I haven't.
No. Okay. So it's a single book, deals with the president mostly, and a potential world-ending CME. And it is much darker than 1 Second After. Let's just leave it at that. If anybody wants to, not be, not sleep very well for a while, it might be worth reading. Because I remember right where I was when I read it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not very.
What's the name of it again?
Day of Wrath.
Day of Wrath. I'm gonna try to remember that.
I think I got it for free on Audible. I'm pretty sure it was one of those free Audible books. So. Rachel says, didn't Fortune talk about Project Starfish that focused on EMPs? Anybody know about that?
No.
I'll
look it up.
I thought Project Starfish was, wasn't that in the new Suicide Squad movie? Wasn't that a giant starfish? Maybe I'm crazy. All right. So what about the, Byron, I'll ask you about this. The cap and ball pistol story. What'd you think of that when he was in college and he had to defend himself?
I thought it was pretty good just to add in, an old time, an antique weapon, that he knew how to use those weapons. He had history with it. And it's just and just talk about the hippies.
Yes. Oh, the hippies. And then there was more hippies later on too, that the girl, was she wearing the sundress and nothing else?
Mm-hmm.
They were dancing and
Yeah, I don't know if you could tell that, he might have been a hippie in his younger days, the way he kept throwing out the VW bus and the Beetle and the hippie that the gun. I mean,
so
speaking of that, that's something like they were talking about using they touched briefly. The doctor talked about the possibility of using marijuana for painkiller, and especially when they were talking about the cancer patients and whatever. My best friend from like the 3rd grade, the only real dad that he knew growing up was a stepdad, and he actually ended up with cancer. And toward the end, the only thing that they were giving him morphine like it was candy, and it wouldn't do anything for the pain, but he could kick back and smoke a joint and it would take his pain away.
Sure. I have no problem. I almost wondered if Forstche was being a little like, so you guys remember the guy that basically is like, we can't do that, it's illegal. Right. It was one of the guys around the table, and I almost wonder if Forstche was if that was a little bit of satire, or he was making fun of the guy. That's kind of what I took from it, because I think he was, because North Carolina would be the Bible Belt, would it?
Yes, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely Southern Baptists.
That's why I kind of appreciated the school that he went to, because they were, I don't know, a little more centrist. They were still definitely, Christian morality, but they were a lot more flexible in their beliefs, on the things that didn't matter, they were cool with, So I appreciated that.
Oklahoma is like the buckle of the Bible Belt, and I'd say general consensus in this state is that marijuana is not a big deal. I mean, we didn't pass it for recreational use, narrowly didn't, but I mean, it is legal for medical use.
So I got to make a correction, guys. Day of Wrath is the terrorist attack book that he wrote. 48 Hours, I think it's 48 Hours, is the CME book. That's the really dark one. So anybody who's listening, I stand corrected. I was totally wrong. I've read them. I never finished Day of Wrath. I liked it, but I didn't finish it. But 48 Hours is the one that is exceedingly dark. Let's just leave it at that. So Bonnie Blue says Black Mountain is half hippie, half Billy Graham. That is great. Love it, Bonnie Blue. And apparently you can go there, get a map of all the places listed in the book, and take a little tour to see all the stuff, which I thought was kind of cool.
Well, I know Angry American has that in his box set.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Somebody they put together a map or something, didn't they? Yeah. Or one of his friends. So Jen, right? She was the older, the mother-in-law.
Yep.
She makes a throwaway line. She goes, I never liked those Mr. Coffee machines anyway. Talking about when he put the coffee. It just so happened that when I read that, I had just watched a video on YouTube from, anybody ever watch the channel Technology Connections? Mm-hmm. He's a millennial. He goes back and deals with older technology. Anyway, he did one on the Mr. Coffee Maker. And so for those who don't know, the ubiquitous coffee maker that everybody has sitting on their shelf was only introduced in 1970. So she's definitely old enough to remember the days when the only thing you had was a percolator, right?
Right.
Yep, we have one.
Yeah. And so it was just funny that she didn't like the newfangled Mr. Coffee. I thought that was quite funny.
I remember
there's an easy solution for that. Just don't drink coffee.
Yes. What's that, Byron?
I remember the percolator with my grandmother growing up, drinking coffee, being in her house in the summer, and that's the only coffee maker she used for years was the percolator.
Right. And my grandmother, she wasn't a coffee drinker, but if anybody came over, that's how she made it for them. But I mean, she kept her bread in the fridge, and she had her shelves lined with towels in the fridge too, because I don't know, the old fridges, I guess they had a lot of moisture problems, but just the funny old things the old people did. What about the line? Was the lady the mayor? Was she when they first started, or was she just
Kate,
like
yes?
Yeah. Kate. Yeah. So when he's first describing the EMP to everybody, she pipes up and she says, "What would it take to build a better surge protector?" You know what I mean? That was kind of summed up the entire government mindset, or anybody's mindset, to dealing with an EMP. What do you think of that, Byron?
I thought it was pretty good. Now we need the surge protector after it's surged. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nate? Sorry, Byron.
Not to just leave it to the government just to be the 1 second behind.
Yeah, that's good. That'll be the title of tonight. Yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good little quip. I mean, you're way behind the eight ball, and the beginning of the book, the forward is read by Newt Gingrich.
Yes.
And he kind of goes through saying, we've known about this for years and we need to harden the system.
Right.
So it's kind of funny to hear her say that later on in the book.
That is very true. It was a good way of looking at it. And something that Newt Gingrich said in the original the forward or whatever, he says something along the lines of he's writing, what is it, the future's history or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And that line stuck with me this time. And the longer I read the book, the more I realized it really reads like the history of the future. Like it, that's what it was very much like it read like, and I'm sure this was intentional. Sometimes when you read stories from the Second World War or the Civil War and how they're kind of somebody standing back kind of describing the events, that's kind of how this book went as well.
Yeah.
Hey, we got Nat, the preparedness guy. He said the author was definitely trying to get a point across. So one of the things when I went to Goodreads, reading the different reviews, good and bad, some people said that it was fear porn designed to scare people to get prepared for an EMP. Is that a true statement, Nate?
No, I think it's just opening your eyes to reality that it could happen.
Right.
I mean, it's. I would believe more in an EMP than I would a CME.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it happening in the next 75 years.
I think it's, it's probably as possible as a nuke getting dropped, maybe more possible even. Because you look at this story and they said, what did the guy say? Nukes dropped on all our major cities would have been more humane than an EMP. Yeah.
I wouldn't put something like that past somebody like North Korea or something.
Well, and the worst of it is, like, even in the book, you don't know, they really don't know who ever did it, right?
Right.
Did anybody catch what time of year they did this at?
Yeah, well, there was discussion of that. So it was, was it late winter, early spring? Or was
early
it fall?
Spring before they got any of the plants in.
Right. Somebody put some thought into that,
Yeah.
And I can just picture some, whether, China or what, North Korea or Iran, whoever it was, they probably, just like the guys did when they scoped out for 9/11, right? They prod for weaknesses, they do reports on this stuff, and they're like, okay, what would the worst time of the year be to let off an EMP? And
I would have thought like January.
No, it's still cold out in January, so northern states still have ice or freeze outside, so you can get your meat out of the freezer.
That's a good point. And also, because even in winter, your larder's still going to be a bit full, right? Because you still have some of that harvest left over from fall.
Yep.
Whereas early spring, look in the book. What are they eating in early spring? It was basically dandelion soup,
Yeah, okay, so like when Texas had that big freeze, what was it, last February or whatever, you had people literally that had food rotting and it was below freezing outside. So let's just remember that not everybody's that bright.
Oh, that's true.
100%. Yeah. Here's Nat. No one I appreciate Nat. You guys know he's got his. I might butcher this, Nat. So if I do, but it's his master's in emergency preparedness or emergency management, and he also works for a large area for this thing. But he says no one wants to use an EMP on North America yet because we are such consumers for the rest of the world. But when the dollar collapses, it will only benefit them to take it out of the
Take
fight.
us out of the fight.
Okay,
yeah.
take us out of the fight. Sorry. Good old.
I'm just proud of you for pronouncing his name right.
Yes, it's taken me many, many months to call him that, not Nate. So. But he appreciates it. So, and Bonnie Blue says, "Look at the billion sent to the Ukraine. The EMP Commission estimated $2 to $3 billion to harden the U.S. grid." I'm going to guess it would be a lot more than that today, because that EMP Commission was written in the late '90s, wasn't it, Nate?
Probably.
That report somewhere around there. So, I'll bet you it would be. Well, I don't know, what would it be?
Okay, how much money have we given to Ukraine?
Oh, sure.
$45 billion.
It would be a decimal place, right?
Yeah.
Right, and everywhere else.
Now, as an anarchist, I sit back and I'm like, I really don't want the government to do this shit. You know what I mean? Like, I know I know it's a lesser of a bunch of evils. It would be great to see them do it, but I think I'd rather be left to my own devices on doing this sort of thing, or offer incentives to power companies to do it, or figure, you know what I mean? Like,
just become your own power company and harden your own stuff.
Well, that's not the worst idea in the world. It may not be practical for all of us, but was it in this book where they talked about, I think it was, where power, when it first started coming to small communities, was brought on by entrepreneurs who would come, bring a generator, show the guys how to hook it up to a water source, and then the town would have their power. Was that in this book? Do you guys remember?
I don't think so.
No? All right, so maybe it was something I just read.
I can tell you, Tim, that I've been getting prices, and from what I'm paying for electricity compared to what I could have a solar system put in, it would cost me, when I done the math on it, it would cost me less than $200 a month over what I'm paying now to finance the system and have it put in.
It's about $1 a watt right now.
Okay, for solar, all in or whatever.
Yeah. Well, no, $1 per watt for the panel.
Okay.
For your panels plus your batteries, and I mean you can go anywhere from $1,000 down to $200 for a battery.
Well, and I kind of look at that stuff a lot like silver as well, or precious metals. They're a hedge against inflation. Because if you spend the money now, power rates are just going to keep going up.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. And I heard Sean Mills, the solar guy, I heard him talk a little bit about that at LFTN as well, and how, and
that was to have somebody else put it in. If I'd done the work from, myself, I can just about cut that in half.
Absolutely. And Rachel brings up EMP shield or make your own Faraday cage. So, I have promoted EMP shield. Yeah, there it is. I have one hooked up to my power panel. Can I prove that it's going to protect you from an EMP? I can't, because I don't know what an EMP will do. Nope. But what I can say is that they sent me a 140-page report where it was tested by people who test for government EMP hardness, and it looks like it works. That's all I can say. But what I can tell you is it's a really good lightning and surge protector. So there's that.
So Aaron's comment on the EMP thing,
yes,
or the EMP shield, was they have 100% guarantee, but if it doesn't work, you're not going to be able to contact the company.
That's what everybody says. I know, and I'm like, oh, that makes. Now here's the thing: the guarantees for lightning strikes or power bumps. Which was kind of cool. I was like, oh, because I always used to make fun of them. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But as far as the EMP thing, I think that's a wild card, because I don't know if anybody really knows. Well, nobody knows, experientially what it's going to do. People can know theoretically what it's going to do, but it would be interesting to see. Well, I don't know. I don't think I want to live through it. Let's put it that way. So, what do we got next here? So they make a comment in the book about the lack of communication being one of the hardest, one of the worst things to deal with, because like they said, after 9/11, even 9/11, George Bush gets on the radio or on the TV and talks to people. But in this, there's nothing. Mm-hmm. Nate, our comms guy, shall I take a drink?
I'm out, unfortunately.
I need a refill now. All right.
I mean, they talk more about Voice of America,
Yes.
and it was funny to hear. So when the military shows up at the end,
Yeah.
they're like, "We won, right? We know who we're fighting against, right?" It's like, no, we got our asses handed to us. Do you think we were going to tell you the truth?
Right.
That was a great line.
Yeah.
So, okay. When I had William Forstche on the show, I asked him about why it hadn't been turned into a TV show yet. And he said because this book was released at the exact same time that Jericho came out on TV. And it is very, very similar to Jericho in the story. And so in that, like, it's okay, slide back a little bit. But as far as Jericho being put out there, let me slide back. I kind of lost my train of thought for a second. No, as far as it being turned into a TV show, like I said, Jericho was 100% similar to that. And it would be interesting to see where the communities would end up dealing with it, you know? Rachel just wanted to bring this up here real quick. Rachel says, Tim, go back to the author interview about the EMP that happened. There we are. Oh,
yeah. So I've never seen Jericho, so I have no frame of reference on that.
Have you seen Jericho, Nate?
No.
Oh my God, you guys need to see it. What's that?
Okay.
That's a good show.
Yeah.
Especially the first few episodes.
Oh yeah.
Was there?
I know what she's talking about in Hawaii.
I was trying to read the question or read her comments while I was sharing that last thought, and I lost it. So, yeah, go ahead, Nate.
So that was the Castle Bravo shot, if I remember.
Okay.
It was a nuclear test that we did. I think I want to say it's Castle Bravo. And then it knocked out the power in 3 of the islands in Hawaii.
Okay.
But not all of them. Like, they were right on the edge. And it was a 15 or 20 megaton nuclear bomb out in Bikini Atoll, I think.
Doesn't he touch on this just a little bit in the book?
I think so.
When he says something along the lines of, this is when we first started noticing the effects of the side effect of the nuclear test.
Yeah.
Because that would have been, that's Bikini Atoll or whatever, Nate?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it was the castle. It was one of the castle shots.
Okay.
Out there. I think I want to say it was Castle Bravo because that's the biggest one they set off.
So Rachel, thank you, Rachel. She said I was right about the crew setting up water generation. So, I thought I remembered somebody saying that way back when, but so yeah, that's right. We were talking about the lack of communication and how it would affect people and how the president got on, and that Jericho was the same way. They were in this small town in Kansas, and nobody knew what was going on. So there was rumors and different things. And then all of a sudden the government shows up, and, I guess it was Blackwater or something along those lines. So I think that's why I didn't really trust these government people when they showed up. Did anybody else get that vibe? Like, hey, we need to take a census. Why would they need to take a census? Anybody having, just say it. Hunter says communication is key. And Nat says every disaster only matters in the way it impacts you personally. 9/11 had little actual impact on most of us, but an EMP would impact all of our basic needs. Anybody want to comment on that?
I would say 9/11 has actually impacted us quite a bit.
So what Nat is talking about here, though, is just specifically in a disaster sense. Like
exactly.
I get, that it impacted us in as much as we have to deal with the Patriot Act, or you guys do anyway, but we have to deal with way more overreach when it comes to flying and that kind of shit. But like they said, when it came down to it, the economy didn't collapse. Food kept there. People maybe took a couple of days off from work, but then after that, they kept going. Okay. But yes, I think, go ahead, Nate.
So I'm looking at it right here. I looked it up. It was Starfish Prime. So Rachel actually had it right. She mentioned way back up something about Starfish. And it was 900 miles away. It was detonated at 50 miles.
She shared it. Yeah, go ahead.
It was a 1.45 megaton explosion. And remains the largest bomb ever detonated in space.
And that was the one that blew out some. Yep. Okay.
So this was I don't know if we can see it, but
oh wow.
That was the nighttime sky.
And that was in the 40s?
60s.
60s. Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know we've played this game before, but that's the 1960s when, you know, microprocessors and computer circuitry almost didn't exist, right?
Yep. Yeah, it was July 9th, 1962. The United States launched a Thor rocket armed with a W-49 thermonuclear warhead up to an altitude around 250 miles over the Pacific and detonated it. It took 13 minutes for the missile to reach its pre-designated altitude before the 1.45 megaton explosion illuminated the night sky for 900 miles.
Holy shit. Wow. So there you go. You would have seen something. I mean, oh my God. So the only saving grace was that it was detonated over the Pacific Ocean, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Because if they'd have tested that in Nevada, for instance.
Oh, fuck no, dude.
Yeah, right? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, something I learned when I had Dave Jones on the show was that fallout basically is dirt. So the only way to get real radioactive fallout is it has to be exploded at ground level.
Yep.
And then it picks up all that shit that the radiation bonds to or whatever, and then comes down to dirt. So when you let it off in the atmosphere, all you get's the EMP with almost no radiation whatsoever. I don't know the science behind it, but I'm going to guess what radiation there is kind of just dissipates through the atmosphere. So, you say I was going to say Nat shared it, but no, it was Nate this time.
Yep. So there's the article. I just dropped it in the Telegram.
I'll share that around after, guys. So yeah, it's the U.S. accidentally hit Hawaii with an EMP in the 1960s. So yeah, I mean, you think so that was 60 years ago.
Yeah.
How little we were. Nat, he's always. Let me bring this one up while we're going here.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Yeah, all right. So Bonnie Blue, guys, I know we're all over the place tonight, but I got to let you know that the comments and the community in here have been great tonight. It's been fun. So Bonnie Blue says 9/11, give us the Patriot Act. And then Nat says, you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. He said 9/11 didn't give us the Patriot Act. The government did. COVID didn't give us lockdowns. The government did. They'll never miss a chance to exploit an emergency. And you know what I love about Nat is when he stands up to tell his presentation at Prepper Camp about being prepared, he opens with the lines, I am here from the government and I'm here to help.
Yep. Because, all right, so real quick, Nat, drop in the comments what you think of the Carrington event.
Oh, that would be...
I want to hear that.
You know what we should do some night, Nate? We should have an absolute insane conspiracy night. Just throw it all out there. I mean, we might not. I don't know. Maybe we can't do it on YouTube. Who knows? But we'll have fun with it. So, but yes, I think we're all in agreement that yes, the government. Everything bad I have in my life, the government gave it to me or took it from me, one or the other.
Or both.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. So gets a really nasty infection in his hand, guys. How awful would that be? I can't even imagine. That's what I was wondering. What do you think?
It didn't kill him.
Yeah. Well, because there's even a mention at the end of the war or the battle that he's still weak from the infection before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long that would take.
Because my wife, she'll get cellulitis at times before, so I've seen her. It didn't make her sick. And I'm sure that's just like a staph infection. I mean,
lasts for a long time, hey?
and it's strong antibiotics. I mean, it's just if it's not called, I mean, you better get an IV in it. And it's really stouter, more stouter than what you get over the counter, or even at the pharmacist.
So, another thing I wanted to kind of chat about a little bit was William's writing style. So, do you guys notice how he liked to talk about the events after they happened? And I thought it was fairly effective. Now, here was my thoughts at the end of reading this time. I said there was enough in this one book that someone else writing this as a series of prepper porn books could have turned this one book into 10 books.
Done.
But what I loved about what he did, even though some people complained there was quite a bit of filler in the book, I didn't feel like there was a lot of filler. It felt like he went from one kind of action set to the next action set. Even when they were sitting around debating at the mayor's kind of round table, I thought that was incredibly stimulating. What did you guys think?
I thought that was a very good scene where you have kind of the elders of the town coming and hashing things out, because that's really how it's going to go.
And what I love, so John, the main character there, he says one time, he goes, "It's funny how quick you get your seat at the table." He's like, you sit in one seat today, and that becomes your seat every day afterwards.
Yeah.
And how not a truer phrase has ever been uttered, I didn't think. I appreciated that a lot. And I also, he framed everything in popular culture references. There were so many movies that he mentioned, books that he mentioned, and I loved his thoughts on how we frame everything through the stories we've heard in the past. So everybody was trying to explain what was going on, and it would always come back to, well, it was like this in this movie or in this book, that sort of thing, Andrea says, John Willis always says it's a little cut in your hands that's going to take you out. And Nat says, John ticks me off when he doesn't wash his hands or wear gloves. It's like his brain turned off.
Well, I guarantee he washes his hands.
Yeah. I'm awful for the glove thing. Awful. And that's probably what's going to get me someday. I don't know where you probably can't see it. So I got a new knife from Patrick Werman.
Canadian howdy.
Yeah. So I was opening some boxes the other day with Patrick's neck knife and went right across the end of my finger. And I should have cleaned it up, and I didn't. So, all right. Nate, this is from Nat. Yep. Not Nat, this is from Nate. Carrington event is wild. Surprised we don't see more solar weather, especially with how vulnerable our tech is. They say that if Tesla had been more successful, our tech wouldn't even be possible. Is that talking about DC or AC, or I don't know. If you could elaborate on that a little, Nat, if you're still listening, I would love that, because
because we've gotten a few, like the past couple weeks, gotten a few M-class flares, maybe an X-class, and it's been as far south as down here. And I can tell you, I don't hear any difference on the ham radio stuff.
So going back to that Quebec event, so the night that happened, there were reports of the northern lights as far south as Florida, which I thought was pretty cool. That's almost unbelievable, but kind of interesting. So I had a couple of quotes. I picked a couple of quotes out of the book. The first one, I can't remember who was talking. I believe this was during one of their roundtables, but he said, my wife would always talk about how great Gandhi was. And I'd tell her the only reason Gandhi survived after his first protest was that he was dealing with the British. If Stalin had been running India, he'd have been dead in a second and his name forgotten. Anybody want to comment on that?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I thought so. What do you think, Byron?
Yeah, that's pretty true. I would say we wouldn't know him.
So, okay, me being me, as soon as I read that, I thought, okay, how about today? Because certain people who bitch and moan and protest against certain things today would have just been, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong at all. I think people need to have the right to protest. But if those same individuals took their plight to Russia or North Korea or somewhere else, they would probably be dealt with just the way that Stalin would have dealt with Gandhi if he had the option, right?
You never hear their name again.
Nope. Well, it was like the Russians when they what did they call it, disappearing or whatever, where they would have the picture of all their government workers, and then all of a sudden, oh, he doesn't exist anymore, and they airbrush him out of the picture.
Yeah,
that's kind of like anybody that goes against the Clintons, right?
Well, there's might be some truth to that. Nat says wireless transmission of electricity. It would create too much electrical interference in the atmosphere. Microchips might never have been invented. So we're talking about the type of stuff that Ayn Rand talked about in Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, the motor.
Yeah, the static or atmospheric electricity engine. That would be. And you know what? If we had wireless transmission of electricity, we probably wouldn't need microchips, is what I'm guessing, because everything would be already moving at the speed of light, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
but,
and electrical vehicles would actually be feasible.
Sure. It would be. Yeah, anyway. I can see that, Nat. Maybe we should have some sort of, I don't know, what we could turn this into a whole nother show at some point. It'd be quite fun, actually. How about this one? Let's talk about this situation for a bit. So the final battle, when they end up fighting were they the Horde or the Posse?
The Posse, yep.
Yeah. Again, there was almost no description of the battle itself, but you join it at the very end after you know that victory's already assured, which I thought was kind of cool, because we knew that they were going to win, or at least I assume they were.
Yeah.
So why waste time talking about it? But I really liked how he talked about him in his discussions with Washington about whether we want to defeat them now but not thoroughly trounce them, keep a bunch of men for later but end up having a long protracted kind of war of attrition with them, or do we want to lose 3 times the amount of people now but they're dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll tell you what, if they hadn't won, it sure would have rained on the sequel parade, wouldn't it?
It's true, but I'm just going to put it out there. We haven't quite spoiled the ending yet, but this is the guy that killed 2 dogs and the girl's daughter. So anything's possible in the book. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
You know, a lesser author would have figured something out, and I think that's why the part in the book I hate the worst is the call that him and Michaela make to the doctor in the other hospital, because you know it. I don't know if it makes me mad or frustrated or sad or anxious, but you know it's pointless from the second they make that call. You know it's not going to fix anything.
Oh, yeah.
But I know if I was a dad, I'd do the same thing.
Well,
in that hospital. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, absolutely. But also don't forget about the long pork.
Oh, right. They did mention that as well, didn't they? So, okay. Since you brought up cannibalism, and since I probably won't monetize this video anyway.
Oh, come on. What was cannibalism? Conspiracy theories. What more could you get?
Okay. So I need to, let's talk about this a little bit, guys, because after my 4th listening today, and if Chuck's still in here, I would love to get your opinion on this. So, okay, they wouldn't eat their dogs, but they would give their dogs to their neighbor, right? Which I understand, you know, when their dog died. Where does one draw the line? Because here's what I'm thinking, and this is probably awful, and somebody will take it completely out of context, but pigs have been known to have a taste for human flesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that was used as feed for the pigs and then the pigs were eaten, would that still cause the same type of diseases or issues? Does anyone know?
I don't know.
I don't know.
The things I think of when I'm reading these, I really shouldn't put this down in writing anywhere, but this is what I was thinking. I was like, because again, they talked about when the guy shot the wild dogs, they asked him, hey, what did they do with the dogs' bodies? So everybody, you know, everything was a numbers game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying I would do it, and I don't think I would, but I'm just curious if, like what Thad did in Going Home, you know, he fed the guy to the pigs or whatever. What would happen? So if anybody wants to, If anybody would care to discuss the cannibalism topic, go ahead and throw it out in the comments there. But anyway, just a thought. So, yeah, Rachel said not in The Walking Dead. And again, cannibalism always seems to come up. So if I can get William back on the show, something I'd really love to talk to him about would be historical collapses. So he talked about Stalingrad and Leningrad quite a bit, the sieges on the cities and how they had to triage the elderly because there wasn't enough food to go around. I would love to hear what he knows about those events and what would happen, because I would love to see, I'd love to compare, and I think he took a lot of how they reacted from that, but I'd love to hear his thoughts on the history of it. And Nate has something he wants to share. Go ahead, Nate.
Go ahead and check the Telegram group.
Oh, okay. Oh, is it, hang on here. Just a second. Is it the book one or the regular one?
Regular one.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's that's a very good one. I appreciate that. Yeah. Rachel said that in The Walking Dead they fed zombies to the pigs and it was okay. So,
well, you also had cannibals in The Walking Dead.
Yes, and but here's the thing. Bob's leg. Bob was infected when they ate his leg, and then he screamed tainted meat. Now they never proved that they were infected, but it was a pretty interesting concept. So I notice how nobody has commented in the community here about our thoughts. Oh, okay. Here, hey Chris, nice to have you, Chris. I never know how to.
Shoot.
I'm so bad with names. I see him on Facebook Live. Says I should interview Jonathan Hollerman. He's done extensive research on crises and poverty, including cannibalism. He wrote Survival Theory 1 and 2. Well, that's worth taking a screenshot with my phone while we talk here so I don't forget. There we go. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
Mate, I knew you ain't right.
I'm not right. He ain't right, boy. He ain't right. Chris says he doesn't know how to pronounce it. That makes me happy. Good. All right. Bonnie says Leviticus 11 tells us not to eat pigs, but it also told us not to get tattoos and nose piercings and, So.
Yeah, but if you read later on in that book, God offers up everything as, and says, don't call what I've, now I know he was actually talking about, people when he was talking about that, but it was the symbolism of it.
And I mean, if you are a Christian, you believe that Jesus did away with the law from the Old Testament anyway, so Leviticus really doesn't matter. And
actually, Jesus specifically said he didn't come to replace the law, but to fulfill it.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, I guess you can take it how you want.
Sorry, I've read the Bible like dozens of times, so I've got it, pretty well stuck in my head.
Oh, I believe you. I did 4 years university studying it, and look where I am. So I don't know. You can put it how you want. So
right.
Okay, so we've got four. No, I brought up. Okay, so here's something interesting. 7,500 reviews on Goodreads. It had a rating of 3.95. Anybody want to guess what the first book in the Going Home series has for a rating? Higher or lower?
I'm gonna go lower.
I would have too, but it's actually higher. It has a 4.08 rating.
Wow.
I don't know. What the hell? So, isn't that strange? The only thing I can say, I'm guessing, is I didn't look at how many, but I'm going to guess there's a lot less overall ratings for that book as opposed to.
Yeah.
And traditionally, the more reviews you get, the lower the overall score. Traditionally, it doesn't always work that way, but traditionally,
unless they're all 5-star reviews.
Right. Yeah. So I picked 2 1-star reviews. What do you think, Nate? Are you looking forward to these?
Go ahead.
we always have fun. So this one's a little bit wordy, but I'm going to work through it here real quick. And Fortune started with a fantastic premise, but unfortunately the book failed to live up to the idea. The author apparently did not learn the lesson of writing 101, that you need to show, not tell. Perhaps it was the historian coming out, but fortunes took amazing details, battles, plagues, life and death, and rather dryly recounted them. He missed out on so many opportunities to really wow the audience with action and suspense. The characters were almost insufferable. The good were too good, the bad were too bad. John was described as an average Joe, but he came across more like a character out of a Die Hard movie. Anybody want to...
Die Hard?
I don't know what the hell this...
Did they even read the same book?
No.
Like,
Do we have John McClane? We didn't know it.
Right?
There ain't no way this dude is John McClane. He's a guy who...
John Goodman, maybe.
Yeah, like, that's really good, John. I like that. Everybody used to call me Dan off Rosamond in elementary school. So, yeah, Hunter disagrees as well. I'm not sure what the person was thinking, but I mean, he's the exact opposite of John McClane. He's the type of guy that sits back and makes plans and does his best to make sure his entire community survives. Whereas John McClane is the type of guy that pulls out a motherfucking Uzi or whatever and kills everybody. You know what I mean? Like, simple as that. So there's more to this.
Well, you know, if you did handle things that way, there'd be a lot more food for you.
That is true. Good point.
True.
So he said the man must be subhuman. This is where he's talking about John McClane some more, or whoever the reviewer is. The man must be superhuman to have survived all he did relatively unscathed. And his constant rhapsodizing about America and patriotism was excessive, especially since his America seemed to only refer to those who were military, ex-military, Republican, and men. I don't know how someone can read an entire book and come away with thoughts based. Thank you. Yes, Martinson said MP5. Timmy, get your movie weapons right. And I was on a bit of a rant there. I just threw out whatever came out of my mouth first. You know what happens, right? So, okay. Nat says, I think they mean he has all the answers. Gets main character treatment like getting the girl. The sad parts like losing his daughter are predictable tropes. Now, I agree with that. But here's my thought on this, okay? You guys ever heard the term plot armor before?
Yeah.
And how So the idea behind plot armor, for those out there who don't know, is basically the main character, things can't hurt them, or you know they're not going to die because you're their main character, right? Yeah. Now, here's the deal. Any person that you interview today is the main character in their life, right? Now, every person you interview, by nature of being able to talk to them, is still alive, right?
Yep.
Which also means that person has survived some weird things in their lifetime. That person has had a case of plot armor their entire life. Now,
I will say the plot armor is worse in Going Home than it is in...
Sure. I agree. But here's, I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're going to tell a story about a character, you pretty much assume, unless the book is, Old Yeller, the main character is going to survive until the end, right?
Yeah, you would think so.
So by the nature of telling a story about a character, you pretty much know they're going to have to suffer through and make it through to the end, right? Like bitching about the fact that your character survives against all odds, well, that's what makes a good story. So step down off my hobby horse there. Right?
Okay, I want to say they need to give you a break on the whole MP5 thing because you're Canadian, and obviously by the fact that you're Canadian, you don't know anything about guns. So
that's very true. All I know about guns is black guns are scary. Therefore, the government needs to take them all away from us. I assume that's how it works, right?
And handguns also, evidently, right?
Yeah, so we can't have an AR-15, but we can have a 223. So, hey, anyway, moving right along. Okay, now, the feminist in me was livid. This is not me speaking. This is the reviewer still. Women in the book. Yeah, I know. I am a feminist. But anyway, the feminist in me was livid. Women in this book were either damsels in distress, nurturers and caregivers, or incompetent crying weaklings. And about 90% of them were wearing tight-fitting, sweat-drenched blouses. Does anybody want to comment on that? So
I didn't know there were pictures.
Okay.
Yeah, where's the pictures?
Okay, now we're gonna talk a little more about this here in a minute in the next review, because in the next review, a person mentions how they feel that William Forstche wrote the main character around himself. Now, I don't disagree with that. Most people, when they write stories like this, quite often they either see parts of themselves as the protagonist or whatever.
Mhm.
Now, I will say, I don't know if it was a bit Freudian or whatever you want to call it, but he definitely has an interesting professor-ish thought process on women. Did anybody else notice that at any point? He's quite often describing young and or old women by how they look, how sexy they are, how they care, all these mental crushes he had. Did anybody else pick up on that?
I can see it.
Okay, they're
Really?
and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it was noticeable the second and third time I listened to the book. Like, there's the secretary that he says in his mind that she looks like Nicole Kidman, and then there's the freshman in university. He's like, oh, she's a good-looking girl, and I'm not, he's like, oh, but she's only 2 years older than my daughter. That kind of stuff, and it wasn't creepy, but it was just a little bit professorish. You know what I mean? Like the whole, thing where they always say professors have affairs with their students and that sort of thing, So Bonnie Blue says typical male, no. I'm not going to say no. It was just maybe a little more apparent in this than other books. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it was one of those things that I definitely noticed, and I was kind of wondering if that was a bit of his personality peeking through. Is that fair to say without being mean?
It's funny talking about that only being 2 years older than his daughter. It remind me of a Marine friend of mine made a statement like that one time. He's like, his friend told they was commenting on a young lady, and his friend was like, she's old enough to be your daughter, and he's like, yeah, but she ain't my daughter.
Fair enough. And the women, so I appreciate you guys saying this. So Rachel says John was a widower. He was moving on awkwardly. And I really appreciated the openness with the grief. And I also whoever this lady was, or this person, the feminist thing, I got to say, well, what's wrong with being a nurturer or a caregiver? Is that not a position of strength? I mean, was there not a stronger character in this book than Michaela? I mean, look at the shit she did. She just, complete stranger, didn't know anybody from anyone, goes up and volunteers at the retirement home, basically takes over the medical care facility, goes under quarantine for ages. Like, I don't know, anybody else, any of the ladies out there view the idea of being a nurturer or a caregiver as being weak? Because I don't think so. I think that's a strength myself, but that's for
They
men.
do a lot of things I couldn't do.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's another one. How about Jen, the old lady? She cleaned up her husband. She would clean up vomit. I mean, John couldn't handle any of that. John had a lot of weaknesses. Absolutely. He got very, very nauseous at the sight of blood or feces, that sort of thing. And another character trait that he had was he would quite often lie to people who, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but he tried to avoid stressful situations sometimes. Did anybody, he didn't want to talk to it. And I get it. I'm a dad. I've tried to avoid this shit too, but things like he didn't want to talk to his daughter about the birds and the bees. He obviously didn't want to talk to his daughter about the fact she was probably going to die, which really sucked, So, yeah, it was just, he had his weaknesses and he had his strengths. And then incompetent crying weaklings. Were there, I don't know, were there women who were incompetent crying weaklings in this book?
Maybe the 9-year-old.
There was a male doctor, or maybe an unsexed doctor. I don't know if they said it was male or female, who was a weakling and who ran to the woods and lived in his cabin and was a pariah from the community forever on. So,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have one.
But I don't know if it was a guy or a girl.
Nursing home, they would just sit at the desk. I mean, but that was.
Oh, fair. Okay, yeah, you're right. But I mean, there was lots of workers who just left. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there was I think there were more. Maybe no, yeah. Rachel says his weaknesses was his girls. Sure, yeah. I know that. Yeah. So and Hunter says that was shock for the.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think I probably would have been in the same position at least for a while.
It's like with the whole nursing home. Where do you even start?
Okay. Let's for anybody listening, let's put this into perspective. You've got a nursing home that's supposed to have backup power.
Yep.
That doesn't.
Yep.
Supposed to have backup water. That doesn't. You have people not in their right mind who are now no longer contained.
Yep.
You have people dying of cancer who aren't going to get their meds. And you have a staff who panicked, didn't know what to do, and most of them left.
Yep. And you have maybe 4 people.
So
4
to
employees.
me, that would be like trying to bail out a boat with a thimble.
Yeah.
Nothing you did would do. You would be so overwhelmed. I think that's probably what you would do is just sit down and deal with it, you know?
Yeah, because it was 2 or 3 days after the fact that the nursing home came into the book, right? So, I mean, these people were there for 36 to 48 hours already and hadn't left.
Sleep. Yep. So Nat says the way the author writes himself reminds me of Taylor Malley's Defending American Interests, which is a high schooler's daydream of having no choice but to do the thing he secretly wants to do. I can kind of see that. I mean, this is William Forstche's soapbox. You know, EMP is the thing that he feels is the greatest danger, and so he wants to deal with it. But also some of the, you know, it would be fun to write something where you're the main character in it. But he definitely has faults. I'll give him that. So. The nursing home workers either ran off or stayed and went into burnout and shock. And Nat says, I've worked with nursing homes for disaster planning. They are absolutely dependent on outside support. They are supposed to have a 96-hour plan to sustain themselves. But what would you, I mean, and I'm sure Nat could chime in on this, but how many people even pay attention during safety meetings, you know? Maybe 10% or none. Right. Yeah. So most people treat safety meetings like they treat safety briefings on an airplane. They just it's something they have to get through. Right. So if you're always told, okay, if the power goes out, the generator kicks in, and people will come to help you. Well, all of a sudden you have no generator and you have no people coming to help you. And you don't know the first place to even try to fix things, like what would you ever do? I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Let's go the next one. This was by some lady named Sarah.
I was going to say, why didn't everybody just go to the Waffle Houses? Because they're prepared for everything.
That is true. I don't know if you could bring all your Alzheimer's patients there, though. That might be a problem. All right. I'll start by saying this is from a lady named Sarah. Oh, okay. There. Nat says none of them without a generator, they are toast. Without staff, they are toast. Yeah. And I think he's talking about who pays attention during safety meetings. I think none of them is the right answer because most people don't. You know, I've always been on the safety committee. I really have everywhere I've ever worked. And most people don't give a shit about it. You know, they just don't. From the little things where you tell somebody, hey, there's a wrench hanging on the natural gas shutoff. Yeah. Most people are just going to panic and run away, right? Chris says Waffle Houses are staffed by Alzheimer's patients. Well, I
have 5 employees, and I would say probably in the past year, all 5 of them have been to the clinic to have gunk removed from their eyes because they don't like to wear their safety glasses underneath trucks.
Right. And that's a really bad place to be without. And listen, I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, I've been a very bad example of what not to do over the years. Now, but I do 99% of the time wear safety glasses now because I've had too many close calls, and I'd like to be able to keep seeing until I can't see anymore, you know?
Yep.
Right.
But yeah, Nat says safety squint. Yes.
Yeah.
I was at Emerge twice in 8 days to get different debris removed from my eyes. Let's just put it that way. So
I've had it once and never again.
yeah, I was stupid, and I'm still stupid with my hands. I know you guys. There'll be a day you'll be like, "Yep, see, I told you." But anyway, let's read this one. Hunter says, "Had a guy that didn't want to wear a seatbelt. Made the deal that if he broke my windscreen, he had to pay for it." Now,
we have another employee who's one of our shuttle drivers who has gotten picked up 11 times for no seatbelt by the police.
I thought you were going to say for DUI. I was like, oh, that's a bad combination, but okay, fair enough. Now, okay, again, the anarchist in me. I wear a seatbelt. I still don't think there should be laws forcing adults to wear seatbelts.
Exactly.
Because when I went through South Dakota and Montana, there's a shit, or maybe it's just South Dakota. I don't know. You guys, if somebody knows better than I do, one of those states, there was a shit ton of people riding motorcycles without helmets. Do I think that's stupid? Sure. Do I also think they should have the right to do it? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And they love to tell the story about what was it? There was a guy that fought really hard to make sure that helmets weren't, that you didn't have to wear them there. And eventually he died in a crash. Well, that's okay. I mean, that's what he wanted to do. Yeah. Everybody does something that's going to have a negative effect on their life. And you can't tell me, anyway, not wearing a helmet doesn't affect anyone else. That's all I can say. And the people say, oh, but it affects your kids and your parents and your husband and your wife. And yeah, but everybody gets to make their individual choice. So, all right. So this Sarah says, I'll start by saying I don't think I am the target audience for this. This target audience are military patriots, member of the government, and WASP males. Ooh, haven't heard the term WASP in a long time. This is a piece of propaganda aimed at lobbying people to take precautions against an EMP attack. Now, I'm going to interject here. Dare we say a piece of propaganda? Because propaganda itself is not positive or negative. It's just a piece of creation that tries to form someone's opinion, right? And Mr. Fortune has a lot to say about propaganda in his book. And anyway, so, did somebody want to say something? We're good? Okay. So that said, here are my issues with the book. While there are plenty of female characters, we never see male characters suffering. Okay. One female tells the main character that she was raped and begs to sleep with him in exchange for some food. When he refuses, the character becomes dejected, and a good deal of time is spent saying that she can't handle the world anymore, and suicide killing her would be a mercy, mostly as a result of her desperation after being assaulted. So, were there any male characters in the book that suffered? Could anybody tell me any male characters that might have suffered?
The two guys that stole something.
I'm just saying, like, what about our main character who damn near died from an infection or almost had his head blown off from an improvised grenade launcher?
Yeah, or the two guys that got executed for stealing the medication.
Right. I don't know. Anyway, that one bugged me. I'm like, I hate that when they look at. So, okay, here's the thing. She talks about the woman offering herself to him. That is one thing that she has, whether it's right or wrong. That is something that she felt that she could offer. It would be this, you know what I mean? Everybody brings something to the table, and it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. He's just being realistic in the world that exists in this fictional world that people are all worked up over.
There's a reason it's the oldest profession out there.
Sure. Yes. And for those who want to know, WASP means White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. In other words, the devil. Sorry. All right. Moving right along. All right. There is no indignity suffered by male characters. Their biggest problem is not being able to provide for their loved ones. I would say not being able to provide for your loved ones is an indignity, but anyway, which they generally quietly go along with. Any kind of male suffering is not developed until the very last section of the book, save for the main character.
What about Ben?
Who was Ben again? Oh,
Ben was Elizabeth.
Right. The future son-in-law.
Yeah.
No, he didn't suffer. He died a quick death, so that doesn't count. No, I'm just kidding. He literally was the definition of suffering. he died a slow, painful death and died worried that his future father-in-law wasn't going to be happy with him. I think that's fucking suffering myself, right?
Yep.
Oh. And Hunter says, ain't that the biggest thing, though, not being able to provide? That's what I said. They said there's no indignity suffered by male characters. Well, you've got all these guys who are used to providing for their families, and all of a sudden they can't. They talk about the guy who was digging 2 graves a day and was giving the food to his family, and he dropped dead. I think he suffered.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez. Anyway, get me mad. The part I didn't mind so much, but it can sometimes be off-putting. All the action is narrated, summed up as if it happened hours or days ago. Much of the fighting and characters getting sick is skipped over and summarized later. So that's what I liked about this book. Is the way that it was written. We talked about how he kind of summarizes events afterwards, because instead of taking a ton of time to expand on any one situation, I felt like he kind of jumped from high point to high point. Does that anybody else kind of get that a little?
It's odd that he would have like 10 books for the first book.
Right, exactly. You know,
the suffering of the nursing home and the town, and then their trip to their first trip to a little neighbor town. I can't remember that name.
Well, you could have taken. So look at the Going Home series, for instance. Was it 6 books in before they finally kind of, before they moved on to the Russians being the biggest?
Yeah.
So you basically had 6 books that told the same story as one book in 1 second after. That's what I think he was going for that. He was just looking to tell a 1-year story, but only hit the high points.
I think
this book reminds me of Executive Order by Tom Clancy. There's just so much that goes on in this one book. It's
here's now. Okay, I got a couple here from. First, did you have something, Byron, you wanted to say? Did we cut you off?
Well, I think that's what the way he wrote it. I think it's probably what made it sell so much.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it was a bunch of little stories about one little town, one little area crammed into a book, and it was done.
And it was, for many years, it was the only book.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about it was its own standalone story that didn't turn into a 4-book series that's all of a sudden a 4-book series. But anyway, so Nat says these reviews are the best. I'm super critical of this book and most prepper fiction, but Fortune did something I've never done, and that's actually writing the book in the first place. Amen to that, brother. That's why I hate even being critical of something like Patriots, because guess what? He wrote a very, very successful prepper porn book. I haven't done it. So do I have a right to criticize him? Well, I'm allowed to say whatever I want, but
Chris,
go ahead.
Chris has got a good one too.
Yes, that's what let's do around here for that. So open to the audience or us as well. Did anyone change their preps after reading this book? Nate, you want to go?
No, but I did change a lot of stuff after reading the Going Home series.
Yes. Didn't that book get you into comms a little bit? Yep. Which
that
is cool.
book and Spirico are the reason I'm an ham radio extra.
That's awesome.
And the reason we have rabbits is because of a situation like this. Like, we want to have as much here as we can do, and going back and looking at where I'm lacking, we add stuff. And Aaron will tell you I have done a ton of stuff that kind of lines up with these books.
Sure.
So I would say it's not this book, but it's other books.
No, that's fair.
Because this is not the first book that I've read.
What about you, Byron?
Probably more just backup manual equipment. Like a backup corn grinder, just more hand tools, or, like more hand kitchen tools.
Analog devices, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To, handle beater, egg mixer, just the simple stuff that my grandmother used.
I like
maybe
that.
Maybe go back and dig in the attic and get that stuff back out, use it.
It's cool to have. Hunter says steam power. Yeah, well, there was, quite a bit of steam power in the book, eh?
They do a steaming show around here once or twice a year. It's pretty neat to see some of the stuff they bring out.
I like I'm a big fan of wood gasifiers, as you know. Not that I've ever built one, but I've always been interested in them for some reason. And I like, you see some of those World War II vehicles that were retrofitted to run off of wood heat or wood burning or whatever. I thought those are cool.
Guy here in town got a Dodge Dakota that's powered by one.
That's crazy. What's
North
that, Nate?
Korea's got a lot of trucks on wood gasifiers.
Yeah, and they're simple. Like the dude I had on was awesome, but he was like up here. When I want to find another guy that is like, here, you can build this out of a friggin' propane tank, right? The dude that was on, awesome. I loved him, but it was like a $4,000 thing that had 800 parts that you had to assemble. I'd love like the
I want no assembly required.
What's that?
I want no assembly required.
Yes, or something simple that you can make with
done, yeah.
a bunch of shit we can find at the landfill, you know?
Right. Yeah.
What about you, John? Did anything in this book change your prepping situation at all?
Not that I can think of, really.
Oh,
I've been listening to Jack for so long.
I know. For me, I guess, like this was when everything, like I found Jack in 2013, and I read this before that for sure. And I got into this, I read this, and On the Beach at the same time. And if you ever read On the Beach, it's a very bleak, end of the world, nuclear kind of thing. And it's a tough book to read. But this definitely opened my eyes. I don't know if I probably knew of the concept of EMP before I read this, but this opened my eyes to what the hell could actually happen. And that scene in the nursing home, I think, scarred me a little bit. There's never been a month that hasn't gone by that I haven't thought about that nursing home scene at least a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, me, it was, and I'm surprised it wasn't brought up in Going Home, because I know Angry American's history with his family, because he's talked about it, that it's never brought up as a diabetic in the Going Home series, but his daughter's a diabetic.
Right. Because that really is a miserable thing to think about. I mean, there's no real, until they figure out a shelf-stable synthetic, insulin. I don't think there's a solution, is there? I think even Chuck said that the only solution is you're going to pass away, right? So
the pens are more stable than the vials are, but they still need to be refrigerated too. They can actually be completely left out for like 18 hours or something without starting to lose effectiveness.
So if they were refrigerated in a similar scenario as the insulin in the book,
yeah, they'd have lasted a lot longer.
That's good to know. That's a start.
The
right?
preloaded pens, but you also have to make sure, just like you have to have syringes, which are actually, syringes are easier to come by, where the pens, you have to have pen needles to put on it, and you really can't be reusing them too many times because they get clogged up with skin. Every time that you use them, you deposit a little bit of skin in them, and the needles on them are so tiny they get clogged up pretty quick.
And they can dull up too, don't they? I mean, microscopically,
right.
I mean, they stay sharp, but they'll, comparatively speaking, anyway.
Right. I mean, times being good, naturally I change them out every time she uses it. But I mean, if you had to reuse them a few times, I guess you could get away with it. But it's pretty easy to stock up on those too, because you get so many of them in a box. So
let's read. I'm going to read this last paragraph from that last review there. So this one just kept going and going, but they said, additionally, the author somehow takes the Donner Party and the rugby team's Andy's plane crash incident, both of which were cases of the living cannibalizing the already dead as a way to survive, and links them to Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed people and then ate them for pleasure. These two don't strike me as the same thing at all. He even goes as far as taking something the Andean plane crash survivors used to comfort themselves, liking their dead colleagues' flesh, to that of Jesus, giving them a sacramental new life. I don't remember that. Does anybody remember him talking about that? I think somebody would have remembered that. But anyway,
It's in one of the books, but I don't think it's in this one. I do remember somebody talking about that, but I don't think it's in 1 second after.
well, the thing is, I don't want to say he wasn't equating the Donner Party with Jeffrey Dahmer. He was just citing instances of humans eating flesh.
Right.
He was just saying this shit has happened before. He's not saying that those poor survivors from the Donner Party were just as bad as Jeffrey Dahmer. He was just citing 3 publicly known cases of cannibalism. That's it. Like, people read too much. And then they're like, it just seems terribly disrespectful to those survivors who suffered through real famine and had to do something horrific to survive. Okay, I don't think, maybe if you ask the survivors, maybe they would think that, but I'm not sure why this person's offended on behalf of the survivors. But And then the last little, go ahead. Yep.
Real quick, Martinson family has one in there
about Ken Berry.
People need to talk or hear Ken Berry. I didn't think stuff Ken Berry talks about would help type 1s.
It doesn't. No. So, okay, we need to make a delineation here because absolutely what Ken Berry says will affect anybody who has self-induced or type 2 style diabetes.
Right.
What Ken Berry has to say about type 1 diabetes is there's not much that can be done for it because diet doesn't affect it, right?
Right.
No.
So I think we should wrap her up around there. We've been well over. This is one of the longest episodes we've done in a long time, and we still feel like we only covered about half the book. But anyway.
Just wait till we start doing Atlas Shrugged.
Oh my God. I don't even know what I'm going to do with that. I want to talk about that so bad. I think I'm going to have to do an episode where I talk about her philosophy first. And I don't know how many episodes. We might even have to turn it into its own thing. But where do we want to close with this, guys? Because, I mean, I'd love to ask your predictions on the next book, but I don't know. Okay, let's start with that. Since none of you have read the next book?
No. I've read all 3 of them.
All right, so Byron and Nate have it then. So let's ask, all right, Nate, what are your predictions for book 2?
I'm gonna say the Chinese make a appearance.
Okay. How about you, Byron?
Yeah, I think whoever it is, they're gonna be in that book. It's Chinese, or I think it has to be the Chinese. I don't think he would use Russia as the attackers. I don't know when that was written. So yeah, I would say Chinese. It seems like the more easier choice as or probably North Korea.
Where does this book stand? Do you guys think that this book will be remembered in? So the other book I was trying to think of earlier was The Last Babylon. So you've got On the Beat, The Last Babylon. Do you think this book is good enough to stand with some of those classics like The Road and different things?
Probably.
And because we all talk about prepper porn, and sometimes I want to say, like, I don't know if I would call Fortune a prepper. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's become a celebrity in the prepper sphere, but I don't know if he was a prepper when this all started. He may have had a bit of a preparedness mindset, but I almost think this was written outside of being a prepper or not being a prepper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he was a full-blown. I think he knew because he talked about the family that lived up in the hill, or out in Canada, that had they were eating good.
Because you take somebody like Chris, Angry American, and I mean it was literally written from a prepper forum on the internet. You know what I mean?
Like Rawls.
Yeah, same thing. So these were written by preppers for preppers with the prepper mindset, and I think what separates this from those is it almost feels like it was a novel written about an EMP that has been embraced by us as preppers going
Right.
forward. Is that maybe the difference, you know?
Or is he a prepper but didn't want to portray it in the book to show people what you need? He thought this might be the easiest way to do it because you're going to suffer loss, whether it's family or, you're going to have, if you're not prepared in some way, you're going to suffer, whether it's your health or you're going to starve.
So Nat says he spoke kind of negatively about survivalist types in this book, and that's what kind of led me to that, So kind of a closing thought is maybe this is a book that deals with preparedness, but it wasn't written by a preparedness person. It's
Right.
kind of like when you look at Die Hard, Die Hard is written at Christmas time, but it's not a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas movie.
The Christmas movie always will be.
I disagree, sir. Yeah.
That was really good. I have to say, I really worked. So,
Okay, now while we're on that,
yes, go ahead.
what about Lethal Weapon? It's a Christmas movie.
Oh boy. So Chris says he highlighted the difference between prepper and survivalist. The survivalist makes do with the cards they've been dealt. I can see that.
Yeah.
But so, and I think Nat has it there, is that he spoke kind of negatively about the survivalist type. And also he wasn't, if he wrote himself into this book, this dude was not a prepper. He was the opposite of a prepper, but he was military. So he had some knowledge, right?
Yeah. I think his alter ego in the book was the hippie, the guy in the gym in the van.
Oh yeah, the VW microbus dude.
Yeah, I think that was his. I don't know. I just had a feeling that was him. In his teenage years, he was the guy in the van.
I'm going to have to ask him. I know he grew up in Jersey and he worked at a horse racing track in New Jersey, so he must have seen some shit when he was a teenager. But it'd be interesting to know if because he would have been 69 was the Summer of Love, right? He would have been 19 for the Summer of Love, so he would have lived right through it. Yeah,
I don't know, just something about that character, the way he just kind of brought him in all of a sudden. First, one of the main characters you see, additional characters.
Nat says a lot of post-apocalyptic books take a jab at preppers or survivalists while writing a situation where it would make sense to be one. And maybe one final thought. The Last of Us, the TV series, Becky and I watched it. We really enjoyed it. And I loved, so there was an entire episode that dealt with, I think it was Bill, the prepper. And yeah, they might have poked fun a little bit, but they showed how his preparations paid off for 2 decades. And he survived on his own and then eventually with his husband for 20 years because he was a prepper. Simple as that. And so I appreciated that about the show because like Matt says, a lot of times they make fun of the preppers, but they're literally writing a scenario where preppers would make sense, right?
Yep.
All right, guys, I say we call her quits. I guess Nat. Oh my God, now I'm going to call you Nat. Nate, where can people find you? Because you're the only one that has a podcast to plug, right?
Yep. Yeah, you can find Aaron and I at Two Chicks Homestead Podcast. I'm the bearded half. We just put one out talking about all the bullshit that we dealt with the village. I think we have a resolution on that for now.
Proud of you.
So you can go listen to that. We jumped in, got involved, got them to change their mind. So it's you can find us on any of the major players. Aaron and I are also on NOSTR finally.
Yes.
So kind of playing around with that a little bit. And then you guys can find us at twochickshomestead.com.
And I just want to shout out the workshop community, the audience, everybody in the comments tonight. I think I got to look back, but I almost think we might have had a record for the most interaction. This was obviously it's a well-loved book, and I know we wanted to get this. We might have to revisit this first book for a second episode at some point because I feel like there was a lot in this book that we still didn't cover. So I don't know how we'll fill it in because we really want to get this series done in time for August, but maybe we'll have to have an extra episode in there somewhere. So anyway, boys, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And guys out there, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great night.